Hi, this is June. This week I thought it would be fun for me to show you how I code and quickly demonstrate the tools and techniques that I use every day, and at the same time inject some of my opinions on development. In this video, I'll be starting off with editors and IDEs that I use every day, and followed by tools and techniques. Here it gets a little interesting is that I normally use these tools and techniques to navigate through the source code of the gem as well as the application code, and then followed by the process that I use. What I do normally before starting a coding session, what I do to prepare myself, and how I normally do it. And then lastly, I'll cover TDD and BDD. This is more of an opinion, so that's how I'll wrap it up. So let's dive right into the editors and IDE. If you ever watched any of my previous screencasts, then you'll notice that I'm using Vim or MacVim. What I did was I tried every text editors on the planet, and that includes Emacs. And then I finally decided that I'm not going to try to look for the next best thing, but instead I'm just going to settle on what I'm really comfortable with, and that's the Vim. I've been using Vim for years, and my fingers have built this muscle memory for over the years that actually allows me to be a lot more productive without thinking too much about the editor itself, but actually concentrate on the code and solving problems at hand. So my recommendation is pick the text editor that you're comfortable with, stick to it, and always try to improve daily to make your experience with the editor better and make it really your own. That's what I've been doing even recently, that every day I'm learning something new. So it's really enlightening. I just told you that I use Vim, but I also use TextMate too. This is not the first version, but this is actually the open source version that you could find on the GitHub, as you could see here. And the reason why I have TextMate 2 is that for certain type of development, such as CSS, JavaScript, and HTML, TextMate does a better job. And because I'm working on multiple applications at once, it helps me to have another text editor to open another project and put it on my second monitor and navigate the code there. Up next is the Xcode. It's open all day for me, as the flagship product of the company I work for is an iOS app. JetBrains makes AppCode, which is an alternative, but Xcode has improved a lot past couple of years, and I'm very happy with it. The only annoying part was when they changed the keyboard shortcuts, but I have adapted to new keyboard shortcuts, and I'm pretty proficient with it now. I spent my career trying to avoid Java development, but it always pulls me back in. And one thing that I will not compromise is the IDE that I use. I much prefer IntelliJ over Eclipse, and I really don't want to talk about Java development anymore. Next, let's go over the tools and techniques that I use. Because I work on so many different languages and frameworks, I always have my references handy, usually on a local machine. I always generate my own Rails API documentation, and which can be accessed from my local machine. And I have created a screencast for that, so you could actually search through my blog to find that one. So let me just show you how it is on my browser. And as you can see, the actual URL of the documentation is file, and actually is sitting on my local machine on a hard drive. So when I'm offline, I could still access that. And I could search through the API documentation, which makes it really handy. The most important tool that I have in my arsenal is actually Exuberant Ctags. You may or may not know what Ctags does is that it indexes all the methods. Therefore, within my Vim, I could jump around different methods and exactly find out what they do and look at their source code. So here I have the class from my previous screencast, and what I will do is in this Sinatra app I have this object called snippet, and I want to find out what that find method does, and all I have to do is scroll down and have my cursor underneath the method name and hit command right bracket, and it takes me right to the method. So you can look at the source code and find out what that method exactly does, and you could also at the same time debug it if you need to. In fact, this is how I actually read through all the Rails code. Another cool technique that I use with Vim is actually GF. If I want to go look inside a gem like a Sinatra, so it says require Sinatra, so I just move my cursor underneath Sinatra and hit GF, and it takes me to that directory or file. And in this case, I could navigate through the Sinatra gem code and find out once again how it's written and what's going on there. And another major key tool that I use is pry. And let me just show you how I use it to browse through source code and actually do some really heavy duty debugging. Okay, so I just fired up IRB, or in this case, pry. I do not use IRB, but instead is alias to pry. And you may have guessed, I love browsing through source code. So let's take a look at active record base. So all I have to do is cd into it, and then I issue show source command, which is same thing as $, and press enter. And as you can see, you are looking at the source code. And another neat feature is that I could actually access the documentation. So if I say show doc, or in my case, the shortcut is question mark, I get the documentation. Next, let's look at some of the process that I use. Before I dive into any coding session, first thing that I do is take out my Moleskine notebook and I jot down all the things that I need to do, and I organize my thoughts. And these could include a bunch of doodles and also CRC cards that actually I draw on to organize objects in things that codes that I'm writing, just as well as just some of the algorithms. And it really helps me when I get to my keyboard know exactly what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. And the technique that I use to work and study is actually Pomodoro technique. In fact, when I was freelancing, I actually used Pomodoro techniques to help me keep track of hours and to help me build clients. I'm not quite sure why, but using Pomodoro technique, I found out that I'm a lot more productive and effective. Okay, here comes the rant section. Let me give you some of my take on TDD and BDD. When anybody talks about testing, the first thing that comes to my mind is this, famously said by my friend Brian. Basically stands for test all the fucking time. Here's the thing, I do test all the time. That does not mean I have a 100% test coverage, because sometimes you don't need to test everything. I think when Brian said this, he did not mean write tests for everything. I think it was more of a tongue-in-cheek. I think the message here is that we should write a good set of tests that actually validates what we are trying to do with the code. I'd rather see a good set of tests that actually make sense to test than one that has everything under the sun. For me, the whole purpose of writing tests is to answer just one question. Does it work? So my philosophy is that as long as I have a good set of tests, then does it matter if I'm doing TDD or BDD? I am very religious, but when it comes to the testing methodology, I'm not that religious. I'll just use the techniques that actually will fit the bill. And that wraps up a brief look into how I work. I hope you find it interesting. You could always reach me at, or follow me rather, at rubyhead on Twitter, and of course my blog is at blog.rubyhead.com. And with any suggestions for future screencasts or anything, you could email me at june@juneworld.com. Until next time, thank you.